Chapter 3. I studied Random, remembering what a great card player he was. By looking at his face, I could no more tell whether he was lying, in whole or in part, than I could by scrutinizing the jack of, say, diamonds. Nice touch, that part, too. There was enough of that kind of business to his story to give it some feel of verisimilitude. To paraphrase Oedipus, Hamlet, Lear, and all those guys, I said, I wish I'd known this some time ago. And this was the first chance I really had to tell you, he said. True, I agreed. Unfortunately, it not only fails to clarify things, it complicates the puzzle even more, which is no mean trick. Here we are with a black road running up to the foot of Colvere. It passes through Shadow, and things have succeeded in traversing it to beset Amber. We do not know the exact nature of the forces behind it, but they are obviously malign, and they seem to be growing in strength. I've been feeling guilty about it for some while now, because I see it as being tied in with my curse. Yes, I laid one on us. Curse or no curse, though, everything eventually resolves into some sort of tangibility that can be combated, which is exactly what we are going to do. But all week long I've been trying to figure out Dara's part in things. Who is she really? What is she? Why was she so anxious to try the pattern? How is it that she managed to succeed? And that final threat of hers. Amber will be destroyed, she said. It seems more than coincidental that this occurred at the same time as the attack over the Black Road. I do not see it as a separate thing, but as a part of the same cloth. And it all seems to be tied in with the fact that there is a traitor somewhere here in Amber. Kane's death, the notes. Someone here is either abetting an external enemy or is behind the whole thing himself. Now you link it up with Brand's disappearance by way of this guy. I nudged the corpse with my foot. It makes it look as if Dad's death or absence is also a part of it. If that is the case, though, it makes for a major conspiracy, with detail after detail having been carefully worked out over a period of years. Random explored a cupboard in the corner, produced a bottle and a pair of goblets. He filled them and brought me one, then returned to his chair. We drank a silent toast to futility. Well, he said, plotting is the number one pastime around here, and everyone has had plenty of time, you know. We're both too young to remember our brothers Osric and Findo, who died for the good of Amber. But the impression I get from talking with Benedict— Yes, I said, that they had done more than just wishful thinking about the throne, and it became necessary that they die bravely for Amber. I'd heard that too. Maybe so, and maybe not. We'll never know for sure. Still, yes, the point is well taken, though almost unnecessary. I do not doubt that it has been tried before, and I do not put it past a number of us. Who, though? We will be operating under a severe handicap until we find out. Any move that we make externally will probably only be directed against a limb of the beast. Come up with an idea. Corwin, he said, to be frank about it, I can make a case for it being anyone here, even myself, prisoner status and all. In fact, something like that would be a great blind for it. I would have taken genuine delight in looking helpless while actually pulling the strings that made all the others dance. Any of us would, though. We all have our motives, our ambitions, and over the years we've all had time and opportunity to lay a lot of groundwork. No, that is the wrong way to go about it, looking for suspects. Everyone here falls into that category. Let us decide instead what it is would distinguish such an individual, aside from motives, apart from opportunities. I would say, let's look at the methods involved. All right, then you start. Well, some one of us knows more than the rest of us about the workings of Shadow, the ins and the outs, the whys and the hows. He also has allies, obtained from somewhere fairly far afield. This is the combination he has brought to bear upon Amber. Now we have no way of looking at a person and telling whether he possesses special knowledge and talents, but let us consider where we could have obtained them. It could be that he simply learned something off in shadow somewhere on his own. Or he could have been studying all along, here, while Dworkin was still alive and willing to give lessons. I stared down into my glass. Dworkin could still be living. He'd provided my means of escape from the dungeons of Amber. How long ago? I had told no one of this, and was not about to. For one thing, Dworkin was quite mad, which was apparently why Dad had had him locked away. For another, he had demonstrated powers I did not understand, which convinced me he could be quite dangerous. Still, he had been kindly disposed to me after a minimum of flattery and reminiscence. If he were still around, I suspected that a bit of patience would be all I need to handle him. So, I had kept the whole business locked away in my mind as a possible secret weapon. I saw no reason for changing that decision at this point. Brand did hang around him a lot, I acknowledged, finally seeing what he was getting at. He was interested in things of that sort. Exactly, Random replied. And he obviously knew more than the rest of us to be able to send me that message without a trump. You think he made a deal with outsiders, opened the way for them, then discovered that they no longer needed him when they hung him out to dry? Not necessarily, though I suppose that is possible too. My thinking runs along more like this. I don't deny my prejudice in his favor. I think he had learned enough about the subject that he was able to detect it when someone did something peculiar involving the trumps, the pattern, or that area of shadow most adjacent to Amber. Then he slipped up. Perhaps he underestimated the culprit and confronted him directly, rather than going to Dad or Dworkin. And what then? The guilty party subdued him and imprisoned him in that tower. Either he had thought enough of him not to want to kill him, and if he did not have to, or he had some later use of him in mind. You make that sound plausible too, I said. And I would have added, and it fits your story nicely, and watched his poker face again, except for one thing. Back when I was with Blaze, before our attack on Amber, I had had a momentary contact with Brand while fooling with the trumps. He had indicated distress, imprisonment, and then the contact had been broken. Random's story did fit to that extent, so instead I said, if he can point the finger, we've got to get him back and set him to pointing. Now I was hoping you would say that, Random replied. And I hate to leave a bit of business like that unfinished. I went and fetched the bottle, refilled our glasses. I sipped. I lit another cigarette. Before we get into that, though, I said, I have to decide on the best way of breaking the news about Kane. And where is Flora, anyway? Down in town, I think. She was here this morning. I can find her for you, I'm pretty sure. Do it, then. She is the only other one I know of who has seen one of these guys back when they broke into her place in Westchester. We might as well have her handy for that much corroboration as to their nastiness. Besides, I have some other things I want to ask her. He swallowed his drink and rose. All right, I'll go do that now. Where should I bring her? My quarters. If I'm not there, wait. He nodded. I rose and accompanied him into the hall. Have you got the key to this room? I asked. It's on the hook inside. Better get it and lock up. We wouldn't want a premature unveiling. He did that and gave me the key. I walked with him as far as the first landing and saw him on his way. And from my safe I removed the Jewel of Judgment, a ruby pendant which had given Dad and Eric control over the weather in the vicinity of Amber. Before he died, Eric had told me the procedure to be followed in tuning it to my own use. I had not had time to do it, though, and did not really have the time now. But during my conversation with Random, I decided that I was going to have to take the time. I'd located Dworkin's notes beneath the stone near Eric's fireplace. He had given me that much information also, that last time. I would have liked to know where we had come across the notes in the first place, though, for they were incomplete. I fetched them from the rear of the safe and regarded them once again. They did agree with Eric's explanation as to how the attunement was to be managed. But they also indicated that the stone had other uses, that the control of meteorological phenomena was almost an incidental, though spectacular, demonstration of the complex principles which underlay the pattern, the trumps and the physical integrity of Amber herself, apart from Shadow. Unfortunately, the details were lacking. Still, the more I searched my memory, the more something along these lines did seem indicated. Only rarely had Dad produced the stone, and though he had spoken of it as a weather changer, the weather had not always been especially altered on those occasions when he had sported it. And he had often taken it along with him on his little trips. So I was ready to believe that there was more to it than that. Eric had probably reasoned the same way. But he had not been able to dope out its other uses either. He had simply taken advantage of its obvious powers when Blaze and I had attacked Amber, and he had used it the same way this past week when the creatures had made their assault from the Black Road. It had served him well on both occasions, even if it had not been sufficient to save his life. So I'd better get a hold of this power myself, I decided. Now. Any extra edge was important. And it would be good to be seen wearing the thing, too, I judged. Especially now. I put the notes back into the safe, the jewel in my pocket. I left then and headed downstairs. Again, as before, to walk those halls made me feel as if I had never been away. This was home, and this was what I had wanted. Now, I was its defender. I did not even wear the crown, yet all of its problems had become my own. And it is ironic. I had come back to claim the crown, to wrest it from Eric, to hold the glory, to reign. Now, suddenly, things were falling apart. It had not taken long to realize that Eric had behaved incorrectly. If he had indeed done Dad in, he had no right to the crown. If he had not, then he had acted prematurely. Either way, the coronation had only served to fatten his already obese ego. Myself, I wanted it, and I knew that I could take it. But it would be equally irresponsible to do so with my troops quartered in Amber, suspicions of Kane's murder about to descend upon me, the first signs of a fantastic plot suddenly displayed before me, and the continuing possibility that Dad was still alive. On several occasions it seemed we had been in contact, briefly, and at one such time, years ago, that he had okayed my succession. There was so much deceit and trickery afoot that I did not know what to believe. He had not abdicated. Also, I had had a head injury, and I was well aware of my own desires. The mind is a funny place. I do not even trust my own. Could it be that I had manufactured that whole business? A lot had happened since. The price of being an Amberite, I suppose, is that you cannot even trust yourself. I wondered what Freud would have said. While he had failed to pierce my amnesia, he had come up with some awfully good guesses as to what my father had been like, what our relationship had been, even though I had not realized it at the time. I wished that I could have one more session with him. I made my way through the marble dining hall and into the dark, narrow corridor that lay behind. I nodded to the guard and walked on back to the door. Through it, then, out onto the platform, across and down. The interminable spiral stairway that leads into the guts of Colvire. Walking. Lights every now and then. Blackness beyond. It seemed that a balance had shifted somewhere along the way, and that I was no longer acting, but being acted upon, being forced to move, to respond, being herded, and each move led to another. Where had it all begun? Maybe it had been going on for years, and I was only just now becoming aware of it. Perhaps we were all victims, in a fashion and to a degree none of us had realized. Great victuals for morbid thought. Sigmund, where are you now? I'd wanted to be king, still wanted to be king, more than anything else. Yet the more I learned and the more I thought about what I had learned, the more all of my movements actually seemed to amount to Amber Pawn to King 4. I realized then that this feeling had been present for some time, growing, and I did not like it at all. But nothing that has ever lived has gotten by without making some mistake, I consoled myself. If my feeling represented actuality, my personal Pavlov was getting closer to my fangs with each ringing of the bell. Soon now, soon. I felt that it had to be soon. I would have to see that he came very near. Then it would be mine to see that he neither went away nor ever came again. Turning, around and down, light here, light there, these my thoughts, like thread on a spool, winding and unwinding, hard to be sure. Below me the sound of metal against stone, a guard's scabbard, the guard rising, a ripple of light from a lantern raised. Lord Coburn, Jamie. At bottom I took a lantern from the shelf. Putting a light to it, I turned and headed toward the tunnel, pushing the darkness on ahead of me, a step at a time. Eventually the tunnel, and so up it, counting side passages. Eventually the tunnel, and so up it, counting side passages. That is the proper cadence for that. It was the seventh that I wanted. Echoes and shadows, must and dust. Coming to it, then, turning there, and not too much farther. Finally, that great, dark, metal-bound door. I unlocked it and pushed it hard. It creaked, resisted, finally moved inward. I set down the lantern just to the right and sighed. I had no further need of it, as the pattern itself gave off sufficient light for what I had to do. For a moment I regarded the pattern, a shining mass of curved lines that tricked the eye as it tried to trace them. Embedded there, huge in the floor's slick blackness. It had given me power over shadow, it had restored most of my memory, and it would also destroy me in an instant if I were ever to essay it improperly. What gratitude the prospect did arouse in me was therefore not untinged with fear. It was a splendid and cryptic old family heirloom, which belonged right where it was, in the cellar. I moved off to the corner where the tracery began. There I composed my mind, relaxed my body, and set my left foot upon the pattern. Without pausing, I strode forward then and felt the current begin. Blue sparks outlined my boots. Another step. There was an audible crackling this time and the beginning of resistance. I took the first curve length, striving to hurry, wanting to reach the first veil as quickly as possible. By the time I did, my hair was stirring and the sparks were brighter, longer. The strain increased. Each step required more effect than the previous one. The crackling grew louder and the current intensified. My hair rose and I shook off sparks. I kept my eyes on the fiery lines and did not stop pushing. Suddenly, the pressure abated. I staggered but kept moving. I was through the first veil and into the feeling of accomplishment that entailed. I recalled the last time that I had come this way, in Rebma, the city under the sea. The maneuver I had just completed was what had started the return of my memories. Yes. I pushed ahead and the sparks grew and the currents rose once again, setting my flesh to tingling. The second veil, the angles. It always seemed to tax the strength to its limits, to produce the feeling that one's entire being was being transformed into pure will. It was a driving, relentless sensation. At the moment, the negotiation of the pattern was the only thing in the world that meant anything to me. I had always been there, striving, never been away. Always would be there, contending, my will against the maze of power. Time had vanished, and only the tension held. The sparks were up to my waist. I entered the grand curve and fought my way along it. I was continually destroyed and reborn at every step of its length, baked by the fires of creation and chilled by the cold at entropy's end. Out and onward, turning. 3 more curves, a straight line. A number of arcs. Dizziness. A sensation of fading and intensifying as though I were oscillating into and out of existence. Turn after turn after turn after turn. A short, sharp arc. The line that led to the final veil. I imagine I was gasping and drenched with sweat by them. I never seemed to remember for sure. I could hardly move my feet. The sparks were up to my shoulders. They came into my eyes, and I lost sight of the pattern itself between blinks. In, out, and there it was. I dragged my right foot forward, knowing how Benedict must have felt, his legs snared by the black grass, right before I rabbit-punched him. I felt bludgeoned myself, all over. Left foot forward. So slowly it was hard to be certain that it was actually moving. My hands were blue flames, my legs pillars of fire. Another step, another, yet another. I felt like a slowly animated statue, a thawing snowman, a buckling girder. 2 more. 3. Glacial, my movements. But I who directed them had all of eternity and a perfect constancy of will that would be realized. I passed through the veil. A short arc followed. 3 steps to cross it into blackness and peace, and they were the worst of all. A coffee break for Sisyphus. That was my first thought as I departed the pattern. I've done it again, was my second, and never again was my third. I allowed myself the luxury of a few deep breaths and a little shaking. Then I unpocketed the jewel and raised it by its chain. I held it before my eye. Red inside, of course, a deep cherry red, smoke-shot, fulgent. It seemed to have picked up something extra of light and glitter during the trip through the pattern. I continued to stare, thinking over the instructions, comparing them with things I already knew. Once you have walked the pattern and reached this point, you can cause it to transport you into any place that you can visualize. All it takes is the desire and an act of will. Such being the case, I was not without a moment's trepidation. If the effect proceeded as it normally did, I could be throwing myself into a peculiar sort of trap. But Eric had succeeded. He had not been locked into the heart of a gym somewhere off in shadow. The dworkin who had written these notes had been a great man, and I had trusted him. Composing my mind, I intensified my security of the stone's interior. There was a distorted reflection of the pattern within it, surrounded by winking points of light, tiny flares and flashes, different curves and paths. I made my decision. I focused my will. Redness and slow motion, like sinking into an ocean of high viscosity. Very slow at first, drifting and darkening, all the pretty lights far, far ahead. Faintly, my apparent velocity increased. Flakes of light, distant, intermittent. A trifle faster then, it seemed. No scale. I was a point of consciousness of indeterminate dimensions. Aware of movement, aware of the configuration toward which I advanced, now almost rapidly. The redness was nearly gone, as was the consciousness of any medium. Resistance vanished. I was speeding. All of this, now, seemed to have taken but a single instant, was still taking that same instant. There is a peculiar timeless quality to the entire affair. My velocity relative to what was now seemed my target was enormous. The little twisted maze was growing. It was resolving itself into what appeared a 3-dimensional variation of the pattern itself. Punctuated by flares of colored light, it grew before me. Still reminiscent of a bizarre galaxy half-raveled in the middle of the evernight. haloed with a pale shine of dust, its streamers composed of countless flickering points. And it grew, or I shrank, or it advanced, or I advanced, and we were near together, and it filled all of space now, top to bottom, this way to that, and my personal velocity still seemed, if anything, to be increasing. I was caught, overwhelmed by the blaze, and there was a stray streamer which I knew to be the beginning. I was too close, lost actually, to apprehend its overall configuration any longer. But the buckling, the flickering, the weaving of all that I could see of it everywhere about me made me wonder whether 3 dimensions were sufficient to account for the senses warping complexities with which I was confronted. Rather than my galactic analogy, something in my mind shifted to the other extreme, suggesting the infinitely dimensioned Hilbert space of the subatomic. But then it was a metaphor of desperation. Truly and simply, I did not understand anything about it. I had only a growing feeling, pattern-conditioned, instinctive, that I had to pass through this maze also to gain the new degree of power that I sought. Nor was I incorrect. I was swept on into it without any slackening of my apparent velocity. I was spun and whirled along blazing ways, passing through substanceless clouds of glitter and shine. There were no areas of resistance, as in the pattern itself, my initial impetus seeming sufficient to bear me throughout. Sorry, I lost my spot. My initial impetus seeming sufficient to bear me throughout. A whirlwind tour of the Milky Way, a drowning man swept along canyons of coral, an insomniac sparrow passing over an amusement park of a 4th of July evening. These my thoughts as I recapitulated my recent passage into this transformed fashion. And out, through, over, and done, in a blaze of ruddy light that found me regarding myself, holding the pendant beside the pattern, then regarding the pendant, pattern within it, within me, everything within me within it, the redness subsiding, down, gone, then just me, the pendant, the pattern, alone. Subject-object relationships reestablished, only an octave higher, which I feel is the best way there is to put it, for a certain empathy now existed. It was as though I had acquired an extra sense, and an additional means of expression. It was a peculiar sensation, satisfying. Anxious to test it, I summoned my resolve once again and commanded the pattern transport me elsewhere. I stood then in the round room, atop the highest tower in amber, crossing it. I passed outside, onto a very small balcony. The contrast was powerful. Coming so close to the supersensory voyage I had just completed. For several long moments I simply stood there, looking. The sea was a study in textures, as the sky was partly overcast and getting on toward evening. The clouds themselves showed patterns of soft brightness and rough shading. The wind made its way seaward, so that the salt smell was temporarily denied me. Dark birds dotted the air, swinging and hovering at a great distance out over the water. Below me, the palace yards and the terraces of the city lay spread in enduring elegance out over Colvier's rim. People were tiny on the thoroughfares, their movements discountable. I felt very alone. Then I touched the pendant and called for a storm. And that is the end of chapter 3. Next time we'll go for chapter 4. How long is chapter 4? Oh, it's chapter 5. We can do double chappy next time. How long is chapter 6? We might even do a triple next time. It's actually surprisingly 4, 5, and 6 are all fairly short. Depends on how my voice is feeling. Chapter 7 is long, so it's probably going to be by itself. So I might do a triple chappy, or just do a double chappy for next 2 episodes. 4, 5, 6, 7. And then read chapter 8. Let's see. I mean, this all depends on how my voice is feeling, but 8 is kind of long. Not crazy long. 9. 10. 11. We'll have to see. 10 and 11 might also be a double. Probably do 10 and 11 together just to continue the trend of double chapters being the end point of each book. And then we can get started on Hand of Oberon. So probably, let's see, 4 through 12, I think, or 11. I already forgot. I forgot this is where shit gets real near the end of this book. Shit goes absolutely nuts. 11. Yeah. 11 chapters. So 4. 4, 5. We'll do 4 and 5. Probably. And then probably try 6 and 7. 6 and 7 is actually kind of long. Chapter 7 is really long. 4, 5, 6. What about if we did 4, 5, and 6? The world's first triple chappy. Chapters 4, 5, and 6 all together is like almost the same length as chapter 7. 87 to 309. 309 to 324. Okay, done. 87. 13 plus 9. That's 22. Wait, no, I'm stupid. That's 22. It's 24. No, wait, hold on. 310 to 324. It's only 14. 3, 4, and 5 are longer. Okay, it was just the way I was holding the pages that made them look about the same length. Let's see. I'll try to do 4, 5, and 6 all together the next time I read, because it is like 287 to 309. Well, I guess 286 to 309. 6 is 4, 10, 24 plus 9. 24 plus 9 is 33. 33. I don't know how to count. Yeah, 33 pages. I think I've read around 30 pages at 33 pages before. I'm pretty sure I have in Guns of Avalon. We'll just see how it goes. 4, 5, 6 all together would be fitting because 4, 5, and 6 kind of go together too. Just kind of looking through these again. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say the 4, 5, and 6, we're going to read them all together because they kind of have a single through line all together before it kind of shifts, in my opinion. So, that's what we'll do next time. Let's see, what's the runtime at? Oh, this one's a short one, 37 minutes. Well, shit, now I kind of feel like I should read another chapter. I don't know, my throat is kind of tired. Do I read another chapter? No, I've already spent so long just talking, bullshitting. So I really shouldn't read another chapter. We'll just end it here. Say this one's a short one, but you know what? How about this? I'll try to see if I can get some free time in the middle of the week this week to record another episode. Because I know I've been trying to stick to a weekly schedule, which I know is not ideal probably for people watching, but it's also kind of the best that I can manage while staying sane right now. So, but I'll try to go, since this is a short episode, we'll do a triple chapter next episode. And I'll try to get it done in the middle of the week. So now I'm not going to make any promises about either of those things. Definitely I'll do double chapter next time. I'll try to do triple, but if my voice is dying near the end of it, then I'll just give in and we'll stick with double. And I will try my best for the doing it in the middle of the week, but I don't know how that's going to work out either. So just depends on what I got going on. If I happen to get off early one of the days this week, then I guess I'll come home and record a chapter. So hopefully that works for y'all. Anyhow, I guess I'll just cut it off there because you probably don't want to hear my rambling anymore.